A passenger jet lost both engines over a quiet farm in Kansas. 8 minutes until impact. 157 people were going to die. The control tower had no answers. Then a calm female voice broke through the radio static. She was just a farmer. Nobody knew her secret. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The call came at 2:47 in the afternoon. A big passenger jet, United Airlines Flight 2749, suddenly lost both its engines at 18,000 feet above the flat farmland of Kansas. There was no warning. No smoke. No explosion. The engines just went quiet. 157 people were sitting inside that plane, and they were falling from the sky. The pilot, Captain Daniel Harris, grabbed the radio immediately. His voice was tight but controlled. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is United 2749. We have lost both engines. Repeat, both engines. 157 souls on board. We are going down. The air traffic controllers at Kansas City Center heard the call and froze for a second. Then everyone in the room started moving at once. They checked maps. They looked for airports. They ran numbers. The nearest airport was too far. The second nearest was also too far. There were no good options. The tower had nothing to offer. 8 minutes. That was all the time the pilots had before the plane would hit the ground. 8 minutes for 157 people to live or die. About 40 miles northwest of Wichita, a woman named Mary Lawson was fixing a water pipe in the back of her barn. She was 51 years old, wore dusty boots and a faded green jacket, and had dirt on her hands from working since early morning. Her farm covered 380 acres, corn in the north fields, wheat in the south, soybeans near the road. She lived alone. Her neighbors in the small town nearby knew her as a quiet woman. Hard-working. Polite. She fixed her own machines, grew her own food, and never talked much about herself. They did not know that Mary Lawson had once been Commander Mary Lawson of the United States Navy. They did not know she had flown fighter jets for 14 years. They did not know she had over 1,800 hours in the cockpit, including combat missions in 2 different countries. They did not know that other pilots had once called her Iron Hand, because her landings were always perfect, even in terrible conditions. She had left all of that behind 6 years ago. She came home to Kansas, bought the farm her father had left her, and tried to find peace in the quiet life. She almost found it. Almost. Mary heard it before she saw it. A strange sound, not the normal drone of a crop duster or a small private plane. This was bigger. And it was too quiet. She stepped out of the barn and looked up at the sky. There, high above her fields, she saw the silver shape of a large passenger jet. Both engines were dark. The plane was gliding, slowly, silently, like a bird with broken wings. Mary had spent 14 years in the Navy. She knew exactly what she was looking at. She knew the rate of descent. She knew the math. She did the numbers in her head in about 3 seconds. That plane had maybe 8 minutes before it hit the ground. And there was no airport close enough to save it. She ran back into her barn. She had an old military-grade radio on a shelf near the wall, the kind that could reach emergency frequencies. She turned it on, found the right channel, and keyed the microphone. Kansas City Center, this is Mary Lawson. I am a farmer 40 miles northwest of Wichita. I can see United 2749. They are not going to make it to any airport. I want to help. The voice that came back was fast and not friendly. Ma'am, please keep this line clear for emergency use. Mary did not flinch. I am a former Navy fighter pilot. 14 years of service. Over 1,800 hours in the cockpit. Call sign Iron Hand. That aircraft has maybe 7 minutes before it hits my county. I have a flat, harvested wheat field that could work as a landing strip. I am asking for permission to help. Silence. Then a different voice came on, older, steadier. This is Supervisor Calloway. What was your call sign again? Iron Hand. Commander Mary Lawson. I flew F divided by a -18s out of Naval Air Station Oceana. Another pause. Longer this time. Mary waited. She kept looking up at the jet. It was lower now. She could see it dropping. Stand by, Commander. Inside the cockpit of United 2749, Captain Daniel Harris and his first officer, James Park, were working through every emergency checklist they had. Restart procedures. Hydraulic checks. Fuel system review. Nothing worked. Both engines were completely gone. The plane was a glider now, a 140,000-pound glider with 157 terrified people in the back. Daniel had been flying commercial planes for 19 years. He was good at his job. But losing both engines at the same time, that was not something pilots trained for every day. It had happened before in aviation history, only a handful of times. Most of those times, the story did not end well. His radio crackled. United 2749, this is Kansas City Center. We have a ground observer at your 2 o'clock position. Former Navy pilot. She is offering an alternative landing site, a private wheat field. Do you want to hear more? Daniel looked at James. James looked back. They both knew what the alternative was. A field. Dirt. No runway lights. No foam trucks. No emergency crews standing by. Just flat Kansas farmland. But they also knew what the math said. No airport was close enough. They had no engines. They were going down one way or another. Yes, Daniel said. Put her on. Mary keyed her radio when the supervisor gave her clearance. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. This was what 14 years of training had built, the ability to go quiet inside when everything outside was falling apart. United 2749, this is Mary Lawson. Call sign Iron Hand. I have visual on your aircraft. Do you copy? 3 seconds of silence. Then, Iron Hand, this is Captain Daniel Harris. I copy you. Please tell me you have good news. I have a wheat field. 3/4 of a mile long, flat, and dry. The harvest is 3 weeks old, so the ground is firm. I can guide you in. But I need you to follow every instruction exactly. No second guessing. No hesitation. Can you do that? Daniel's voice was quiet for a moment. Then, Iron Hand, did you say Iron Hand? As in the pilot from Oceana who landed an F/18 on a mountain road in. Yes. That was me. But right now I need your altitude and airspeed, Captain. We can talk about history later. There was something in her voice, not arrogance, but absolute certainty. The kind that only comes from someone who has done hard things before and survived them. Daniel felt something shift inside his chest. It was not calm exactly. But it was close. It was enough. Altitude 14,000 feet. Descent rate 1,900 feet per minute. Airspeed 175 knots. Weight about 143,000 pounds with fuel and passengers. Mary ran the numbers in her head the same way she had run numbers in combat, fast, clean, without emotion. She looked at her field. She knew every inch of it. She knew where the soil was hardest after the harvest. She knew the slight drainage slope at the far western end. She knew where the one bad patch of soft ground was, near the old fence post. She built a landing plan in about 30 seconds. Good. Here is what we are going to do. Turn to heading 265. That will align you east to west across my field. You will have the wind mostly at your back, which will help slow you down on the ground. Do you see the rectangular field at your 2 o'clock? I see it. Turning to 265 now. Perfect. That field is your runway. It is not paved and it is not perfect, but it is long enough and it is firm enough. We are going to put your plane down on it and everyone is going to walk away. Understood? Understood. What's our next step? Altitude check. 12,000 feet. Descent rate steady at 1,900. Good. At 10,000 feet I want you to begin landing configuration. Flaps to position 5. Landing gear down. You will increase drag and your descent will speed up. Do not fight it. You are committed to this landing. There is no go-around option. We do this once. Daniel's voice was tight. Deploying gear will speed our descent. I know. But you need to commit now. If you wait too long, we lose control of the approach. Trust the numbers, Captain. A long pause. Okay. I trust you. Captain, while we wait for your altitude to drop, tell me about your passengers. Who is on that plane with you? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Why does that matter right now? Because you are flying on training and instruments. I want you to remember you are also flying for people. Real ones. Tell me. Another pause. Then Daniel spoke, his voice softer now. Row 12, Seat A. A young woman named Priya Sharma. She is a doctor flying home after finishing a volunteer program. She was sitting there reading when the engines stopped. She did not even scream. She just started helping the passengers around her calm down. Row 18, Seat C and D. An older man named George and his wife Ruth. Married 58 years. They are going to meet their new grandson for the first time. George held Ruth's hand and told her everything was going to be fine. She told him he was a terrible liar. Daniel's voice broke slightly on that last part. Row 24, Seat F. A 12-year-old boy named Marcus. He is flying alone. His mother is waiting for him at the other end. When the oxygen masks dropped, Marcus helped the woman next to him put hers on before he put on his own. 12 years old. Mary felt something tighten in her throat. She pushed it down. Then we make sure Marcus gets to his mother. We make sure George and Ruth meet their grandson. We make sure Dr. Sharma goes home. Altitude, Captain. 10,000 feet. Configure for landing. Flaps to 5. Gear down. Do it now. The big jet groaned as the landing gear deployed. The aerodynamics shifted. The descent rate increased. Inside the cabin, passengers grabbed armrests. Some were crying. Some were praying. The flight attendants, all 5 of them, moved through the aisles with quiet, steady voices, checking seatbelts, guiding people into brace position, doing exactly what they had trained to do. Gear down and locked. Flaps at 5. Altitude 8,500 feet. Airspeed 162 knots, Daniel reported. Good. Your sweet spot is 158 knots for maximum glide. You are slightly fast. Nose down just a touch, not much, just find 158 and hold it there. 158 knots. Holding. Mary was now walking out into her field, moving toward the center. She needed to see the approach clearly. She scanned the tree line at the eastern edge. The trees were about 50 feet tall. The plane needed to clear them with room to spare. She scanned the western end. The drainage slope was there, barely 3 degrees, almost invisible. But she knew it. That slope would give them extra braking friction at the end. She had calculated it into the plan. Captain, listen carefully. The eastern edge of my field has a tree line. 50-foot trees. You need to clear them by at least 80 feet. If you come in too low, you clip the trees and we have a very different problem. Stay high on the approach until you cross those trees. Then I will tell you when to flare. Copy. Tree line on the east. Clear by 80 feet. Stay high. There are also power lines running along the south fence. Stay north of center on your approach. Give yourself 400 feet of clearance from the south edge. North of center. Copy. Altitude. 6,000 feet. You are doing well, Captain. How are your passengers? Scared. But they are in brace position. Flight attendants are doing an incredible job back there. He paused. How are you so calm right now? I am terrified, Mary said simply. But terrified and calm can exist in the same person at the same time. You are proof of that right now. Altitude. 4,800 feet. I can see the field clearly now. It looks small. It is big enough. Trust the numbers. Increase flaps to 15. Flaps 15. Descent rate. 2,100 feet per minute. We are coming down faster now. That is expected. Airspeed. 155 knots. We slowed a little. Get back to 158. Nose down very slightly. You need that speed for the flare. 158, got it. Mary could see the plane clearly now with her own eyes. It was big. Bigger than she expected it to look from the ground. The silver shape was dropping toward her field in a long, slow arc, both engines dark, wings perfectly level. Captain Harris was flying beautifully. He was doing everything right. She said a quiet word to herself that was not quite a prayer and not quite a command, just a word she had said before, on dark runways in other countries, when everything was at stake and all she had was the plane and her training. Steady, she said to herself. Steady. Altitude. 2,500 feet. Tree line ahead. I can see the trees. Full landing configuration. Flaps to 30. This is it, Captain. Everything else was preparation. This is the landing. Flaps 30. Airspeed 148 knots. A little fast. You will bleed speed naturally as you approach the trees. Let it come down. Do not force it. When I say flare, bring the nose up smoothly. Not hard. Smooth. You want the main gear to touch first. Understood. 1,000 feet. Approaching tree line. I see the trees. Coming up fast. You are going to clear them. You have more room than it feels like. Trust the approach. 600 feet. Trees are right there. Mary watched through her binoculars. The plane's nose was slightly high. The main gear was reaching down. The trees were very close. 400 feet. Clear the trees in. Clearing now, Daniel's voice was tight. The jet's wheels passed over the tree line with about 90 feet to spare. Mary exhaled. Flare. Now. Bring the nose up. Smooth. The Boeing 737's nose rose gently. The main landing gear reached for the ground. For 2 full seconds, the plane floated above the wheat stubble, that strange, beautiful moment called ground effect, where the air trapped between the wings and the earth creates a cushion. The plane did not want to land. It wanted to keep flying. But there was no lift left. Gravity won. The main gear hit the ground with a sound like a thunderclap. The plane bounced once, hard. Then came down again. The tires hit the wheat stubble and the whole aircraft shook violently. The sound inside the cabin was enormous, a roaring, grinding, shaking chaos as 143,000 pounds of metal tore through a Kansas wheat field at over 140 miles per hour. Passengers screamed. The overhead bins burst open. Loose items flew through the air. Mary was running toward the plane, screaming into her radio. Brakes. Everything you have. Stand on those brakes. Brakes maxed. We are decelerating, but I don't know if. The plane chewed through the field. The wheat stubble grabbed the tires and pulled. The friction was enormous. Mary watched the distance markers she had mentally placed: 1,000 feet gone, 2,000 feet gone, 3,000 feet. The western tree line was coming up. She could see the plane slowing, but she could also see the trees. Then the plane hit the drainage slope. Just 3 degrees. Almost nothing. But at that speed and that weight, 3 degrees was everything. The nose dipped slightly. The angle increased the downward pressure on the front gear. The braking friction jumped. The plane slowed faster. 3,400 feet. 3,600 feet. The trees were right there. The plane stopped. 180 feet from the trees. Silence. Mary stopped running. She stood in the middle of her field, surrounded by the dust and chaff thrown up by the landing. The big silver jet sat in her wheat field, nose gear bent at a slight angle, the fuselage covered in dirt and straw. But it was whole. The cabin was intact. There was no fire. The emergency exits burst open. The yellow evacuation slides deployed. And then people started coming out. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20. They slid down the yellow slides and tumbled into the wheat field, collapsing on the ground, crying, laughing, hugging strangers. Some sat very still and stared at nothing. Some immediately pulled out their phones and called home. 30. 50. 80. 100. Mary counted every single one. Captain Daniel Harris came out last, after checking that every member of his crew and every passenger was out. He walked across the field toward the woman in the dusty green jacket. He was shaking so badly he could barely walk straight. His uniform was soaked through with sweat. His face was white. He stopped in front of her and looked at her for a long moment. "Your iron hand," he said. "I'm Mary Lawson," she said. "The farmer." He looked at the jet sitting in her field. He looked at the 157 people scattered across the ground around it, all of them alive. He looked back at her. "You just talked a commercial jet onto a dirt field." "You flew it," she said. "I just gave you information." He shook his head slowly. "You gave me something more than information. When I heard the call sign Iron Hand on that radio, I believed we had a chance. That belief is the only reason I could fly that approach." He paused. Everyone walked away. She nodded. Yes. They did. The passengers came to her, one by one, across the wheat field. The first was Dr. Priya Sharma, still composed, her white shirt dirty but her eyes clear. She took Mary's hand in both of hers. "My patients need me," Priya said simply. "I have a clinic in Phoenix. 82 patients who have nobody else. Because of you, I go back to them. Thank you." George and Ruth came next, still holding hands. George had tears running down his face and seemed embarrassed about it. Ruth held a small photo in her other hand, a picture printed from a phone. A baby wrapped in a blue blanket. "This is our grandson," Ruth said. "Oliver. He was born 4 days ago. We have never held him yet. We were going to hold him tomorrow." She looked at Mary with steady eyes. "Now we still can." Marcus came by himself, the 12-year-old boy. He stopped in front of Mary and stood very straight, the way boys do when they are trying not to cry and want to look brave. "My mom is waiting at the airport," he said. She is going to be really scared when she finds out what happened. She is going to be really glad when she sees you, Mary said. Marcus nodded. Then he said something that Mary would think about for years afterward. The lady next to me didn't know how to put her mask on. I showed her. Like they showed us in the video at the beginning. He paused. I thought that video was boring. I'm glad I watched it anyway. Mary laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. That is excellent thinking, Marcus. He smiled and walked back toward the other passengers. The FAA investigators arrived within 90 minutes. They brought engineers, recorders, cameras, and clipboards. They measured the landing path, analyzed the soil, calculated the friction coefficient of wheat stubble, and reviewed every second of the cockpit voice recorder. The lead investigator, a woman named Director Chen, sat across from Mary at a portable table set up in the field and asked her questions for almost 3 hours. Mary answered all of them directly and without exaggeration. At the end, Director Chen put down her pen and looked at Mary for a long moment. Commander Lawson, she said, she had used the title automatically, and did not correct herself, I have investigated over 200 aircraft incidents in my career. I have never seen a successful dead-stick landing of a commercial aircraft on an unprepared surface with all souls aboard surviving. It has never been done before. Not once. Captain Harris flew an excellent approach, Mary said. Captain Harris followed your instructions. There is a difference. Director Chen tapped her notebook. I want to ask you about the drainage slope. How did you account for that in your stopping distance calculation? 3-degree slope at the far end of the field adds roughly 14% additional braking force due to the increased normal force on the gear. I calculated that into the stopping distance and it gave us an extra 160 to 200 feet. That is why I chose this particular field over the next closest option, which was longer but flat. Director Chen stared at her. You calculated coefficient of friction adjustments for a drainage slope in your head, in real time, while conducting voice communications with a distressed flight crew. It is what combat pilots are trained to do. You have been retired for 6 years. Mary looked out at the field. At the jet still sitting in it. At the people still milling around it in small groups. You do not forget that kind of training, she said quietly. It does not leave you. You just stop using it. Until you have to. 3 days after the landing, the Navy called. A Rear Admiral Mary had served under 20 years ago. He told her that word had spread through every squadron on both coasts. That the name Iron Hand had come up in briefing rooms and ready rooms from Virginia Beach to San Diego. 2 weeks after the landing, 6 F/A-18 Super Hornets from Naval Air Station Oceana flew a route that took them directly over Mary's farm. They came in low, about 800 feet, in a tight formation, their engines filling the sky with sound. Mary stepped out of her barn and looked up. As they flew directly over her wheat field, the same field where the jet had stopped 180 feet from the trees, all 6 aircraft rolled their wings left, then right, in perfect unison. A salute. Then the lead aircraft broke formation and pulled straight up, afterburner igniting, a pillar of fire climbing into the afternoon sky. The missing man formation. Not for a fallen pilot. For a returned one. Mary stood in her field with tears she did not try to stop. She had not cried after the landing. She had not cried when the passengers came to thank her. She had held it together through all of it. But this broke through. Her phone was ringing. She answered it. Iron Hand. The voice belonged to a man she had not spoken to in 4 years. Commander, retired, Tom Vasquez. He had been her wingman on 2 deployments. The whole Navy knows what you did. The whole country knows what you did. We all just wanted you to know, we never forgot you. We never stopped being proud of you. You never stopped being one of us. She could not answer for a moment. Then, I'm a farmer, Tom. You're Iron Hand in overalls, he said. There's a difference. A month after the landing, Mary drove to a school in Wichita. The teacher, a woman named Ms. Reyes, had written to her and asked if she would speak to her 8th grade class. Mary had almost said no. Then she thought about Marcus, the 12-year-old boy who had helped his neighbor with her oxygen mask because he had paid attention to the safety video. She stood in front of 30 students and told the story simply, without dramatizing it, in the same plain language she used for everything. She told them about the Mayday call. About looking up and knowing instantly what was happening. About the choice to pick up the radio instead of calling someone else and hoping they would handle it. Someone asked me later why I did it, she said. Why I got involved. I had a quiet life. I had my farm. I could have let the professionals handle it. She paused. The truth is, I was the professional. I just happened to be wearing farmer's clothes at the time. Your knowledge does not care what clothes you are wearing. If you have skills that can help someone, and you choose not to use them, that is a decision you live with. A girl in the front row raised her hand. Were you scared? Completely, Mary said. The whole time. Then how did you stay calm? Mary thought about it. Because being scared and being calm are not opposites. Fear tells you the stakes are high. Calm is how you meet those stakes. You can feel both at the same time. In fact, in the situations that matter most, you almost always do. Another hand went up. A quiet boy in the back. What did it feel like when the plane stopped? Mary was quiet for a moment. Like every second of 14 years of training had been pointing at that one moment without me knowing it. Like nothing I had ever done was wasted. Even the hard things. Even the things that seemed pointless at the time. She looked at the boy. Nothing you learn is ever wasted. You just do not know yet when you will need it. 1 year after the landing, United Airlines held a ceremony in Phoenix. Captain Daniel Harris was there, along with his full crew. All 157 passengers had been invited. 143 of them came. Dr. Priya Sharma came with a photograph of one of her patients, a man named Carlos who had been on dialysis for 3 years and had just received a kidney transplant the previous month. He is alive because I came home, she said simply. George and Ruth Peterson came with their daughter and their grandson Oliver, now 1 year old and starting to walk. George took Mary's hand and held it for a long time without saying anything. Ruth said, "He has your eyes, I think. Steady. Like nothing scares them." Marcus Bennett came with his mother. He was 13 now, slightly taller. He was wearing a Junior Aviation Club t-shirt. He told Mary he had signed up for a program that taught young people about flight. Because of what happened? Mary asked. Because of what you said. That nothing you learn is ever wasted. He shrugged. I figured I should start learning things. Captain Harris gave a speech. He talked about that afternoon in the cockpit, the terrifying silence when both engines died, the creeping certainty that there was no good ending, and then the voice on the radio. Calm. Certain. A farmer's voice that turned out to be a warrior's voice. She gave me information, he said. But more than that, she gave me belief. When I heard that call sign, when I knew who was on the other end of that radio, I believed we had a real chance. And belief, when everything else is gone, is enough to make a person keep fighting. He paused. Everyone in that field is standing here today because a woman in Kansas was just a farmer, until she wasn't. Mary drove home from Phoenix the next morning. She got back to her farm in the early afternoon. The October sky was clear and wide and blue, the way Kansas skies get in autumn, so big it feels like standing inside a painting. She walked out to the field. The tracks from the landing were long gone, covered over by new growth. You could not tell, looking at it now, that anything had ever happened here. It was just a field. Her field. Flat and quiet and ordinary. She stood in the middle of it for a while. She thought about Marcus learning to fly. She thought about Oliver taking his first steps. She thought about Dr. Priya Sharma going back to her 82 patients. She thought about George and Ruth, their hands joined, 60 years and still holding on. She thought about what she was. A farmer. A Navy pilot. A woman who had found peace in a quiet life and then discovered, when it mattered most, that she had never actually left behind the person she used to be. That you do not leave behind who you are. You just carry it differently at different points in your life. Her barn radio crackled softly in the distance, just static, just the sound of an empty sky. She kept it on always. Old habit. Just in case. She turned and walked back toward the barn, back toward the tractor she still had to fix, back toward the ordinary work of an ordinary day. She was just a farmer. Until she wasn't. And she was ready, always ready, to be both.